Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Read Anything Lately podcast. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Jason.
And we are back after quite a long break.
Indeed.
Yes. I can't now remember. I was just telling Jason it had been 6 months. I'm not sure if it had actually. I think it's about 6 months.
Yes, our last episode was either in late May or early June, but either way, it has been just about 6 months.
Just about half a year. So let me tell you what's happened in that intervening time. We are now both adult men. We're no longer the callow 17-year-olds we were. We're now aged 18-year-olds.
Time flies.
The time flies. Jason has a long white beard, and I'm bald.
Yeah, there's actually flies buzzing around me right now.
Yeah. And we are both college English majors now, which means we're actually doing as coursework the stuff that we used to just do as a hobby. And so we have we paused Read Anything Lately for a variety of reasons. What was the reason why we never did episode 7 the first time around? What was the inciting incident there?
I cannot remember. I know that the reason we didn't do any in the intervening time is simply because we couldn't really set anything up, or perhaps we sort of, bandied around the idea of setting something up but never did. But regardless...
Oh yeah, because we graduated. I forgot we
Yes.
graduated in early June because in my head I'm still thinking like summer vacation is late June.
And we were primarily using our school's, one of their recording studios to record our episodes.
Which is really embarrassing.
It's not embarrassing.
It's kind of embarrassing that we were recording in our high school.
Yeah, recording in a pre-established, intentionally made recording studio.
Sure.
It's better than what we have right now.
In a callback to episode 3, I'm sick again. But
I'm
now...
also sick.
What?
I'm also sick.
Jason's also sick, but you can't tell. And we are recording now in my dorm room on my Android phone using the app Easy Voice Recorder, which is able to record audio much better than my phone's actual built-in audio recorder.
Not sponsored.
We're not sponsored. Easy Voice Recorder, please sponsor us.
Please.
We will take pennies at this point. But you are now listening to episode 7 of the Read Anything Lately podcast. We are finally back. And I'm going to re-inaugurate this series by re-asking its re-inaugural re-question. Jason, you read anything lately?
Indeed, I have, Isaac. So, between our last episode and now, I have read the critically acclaimed indie comic series Scott Pilgrim. It ran between 2004 and 2010, and essentially it describes the journey of one young man named Scott Pilgrim and his journey to be less of a horrible person through the power of love and self-respect.
So this is a great comic. I love this comic. They made it into an excellent movie with Michael Cera as well.
And an animated series just a few years ago.
Yeah, they did make it into that animated series. And isn't there one other... Oh, there's a beat-em-up video game.
Yeah, actually.
So, you described the basic structure of this story as a guy redeeming himself through the power of love. So, give a basic overview of the story because I know it used to be customary to execute people who hadn't read Scott Pilgrim, but recently there's been a more humane law that we just tell them what it's about.
Yeah, we've changed since then, ladies and gentlemen.
We've changed.
So, Scott Pilgrim is about a young man, a 23-year-old man named Scott Pilgrim. He lives in an apartment in Toronto, Canada, with his gay roommate, Wallace Wells, and he is dating a high schooler, specifically 17-year-old Knives Chow, who is absolutely obsessed with him, even though he honestly could not really care less about her.
He could care less.
He could care a little less, I think.
Yeah.
So, all of it, this is the status quo. This is what is established at the start of the story. But then, at a house party, Scott Pilgrim meets a woman named Ramona Flowers, and he is head over heels almost immediately. And he pursues her romantically, while also still technically dating that high schooler. I wonder if that'll come up later. And he eventually learns, through being attacked by a man named Matthew Patel, that if he wants to date Ramona, he will first need to defeat her 7 evil exes. He is attacked during a performance that his band does in a local studio by a man, once again named Matthew Patel, who fights him with his mystical powers until he is soundly defeated. And this is just the start.
That is to say, until Matthew Patel is soundly defeated.
Yes, Matthew Patel is soundly defeated. Scott Pilgrim is not soundly defeated. So, 6 books, 2004 to 2010, and it defines the journey of Scott as he, in a frankly shockingly realistic way, sort of going over his past, going over the mistakes he's made, whether or not he really admits that they were mistakes in the first place, and through trial and error, lots of error, but certainly no lack of trial, he eventually is able to find a way to not just love Ramona, but also love himself.
And from a lot of the description of this plot, we might be giving the audience the impression that this book is a very grounded, slice-of-life romantic comedy. So
I did mention those mystical powers.
Yeah, but go into that in a little more detail for our audience, what the genre is here.
The way that I have always thought of Scott Pilgrim is, it is essentially as if a slice-of-life story took place in the Street Fighter universe. You have normal people living relatively normal lives in Toronto, the mysterious land of Toronto, Canada. But you also have people who are throwing around mystical powers. Scott Pilgrim is renowned as the best fighter in the province, despite being a 23-year-old slacker, whose only main redeeming quality is that he is good at playing the bass. There are robots, there is magic, there's a lot of weird mind shenanigans, and above it all is really, Isaac has defined it before as essentially American shonen.
Well, Canadian shonen.
Well,
yeah.
Canadian.
I might have called it American shonen.
North American shonen. But it's essentially like, it is made in the image.
And explain for our audience what shonen is.
Shonen is a genre of manga. Essentially, think Dragon Ball or One Piece or Bleach. Primarily a male demographic and lots of action with a
young male demographic.
A young male demographic with a main character who is generally not the sharpest tool in the shed, but is really good at fighting. So this is essentially, what if you mixed like a shonen manga with a Canadian slice of life comic book, and you mix them together, and you had it like, it blends surprisingly well. The elements, they don't feel out of place, and when they do, it adds to the story and the humor. And overall, it always fits with the story it's trying to tell. There's never anything that's super duper out of place.
So how does, I think we should name drop the author, how does Brian Lee O'Malley blend the shonen and the down-to-earth elements of the story?
Essentially, Brian Lee O'Malley was very inspired by Japanese manga. Specifically, when he started writing Scott Pilgrim, he was inspired by, I cannot recall the name at this moment, but it was essentially, I believe it's titled Even a Monkey Could Draw Manga. It's sort of like a tutorial book for drawing manga, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically Japanese comics.
Yeah.
So, it blends the elements together by having them, it feels...
Well, because the emotional core of the story is that Scott needs to be worthy of Ramona, but then that gets expressed through this shonen lens of having to fight mystical bad guys to be worthy of her.
Yes, he's essentially... The shonen part comes in by basically having the phrase that Scott needs to fight for his love taken entirely literally. Scott literally needs to fight people to be in love with Ramona. And each opponent, surprisingly, it actually sort of fluctuates in terms of the scales of the bad guys. Scott often does not win just through punching and brute force. Oftentimes he has to outsmart his opponents, because all of the X's are powerful, and some of them are so much so that Scott, even as the best fighter in the province, needs to, perhaps for the first time in his life, actually use his brain to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And besides that, it's a neat juxtaposition because it's sort of mentioned out of nowhere by one of the characters that Scott is one of the best fighters in the province. And the juxtaposition is honestly played for comedy because Scott Pilgrim is, besides being a really talented fighter, is again a slacker. He is lazy. He does not like holding a job. He's only really ever had one job, and when he lost it, he never found another one. He is really good at playing the bass, though. But that's, again...
He's alright at playing the bass.
He's established as being fairly okay at playing the bass.
Isn't there a joke in the comics where they say, like, hey kids, you can play along with... His band is called Sex Babam. You can play along with Sex Babam because there's only 3 chords because they kind of suck, or something like that.
No, that makes sense. So,
although I guess a bass doesn't play chords, so who knows how many bass notes there are in that song.
And that is fairly telling about Scott, that at the beginning of the story, really his 2 only redeeming qualities are that he's good at fighting, and he's okay at playing the bass. Besides that, this guy sucks. He is a slacker, and he is lazy, but if it were just that, he would be, well-meaning, but perhaps a bit flawed at heart. No, he is extremely flawed at heart, and only a little well-meaning. He is selfish. He is pretty stupid, honestly. More in the sense that he just does not really understand how his actions affect other people. And that's one of the main things of the story, is him learning how his actions do and have affected other people, and how through that sort of affection, it can affect him too. Or affectation, I believe, is the more proper word.
An affectation is an air. It's something you put on.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever.
I believe Scott Pilgrim is, overall, it is a very symbolic journey in a lot of ways. The story kind of plays fast and loose with the themes. Sometimes there is an underlying message, and sometimes it's just, haha, funny jokes. Funny 20-something-year-old people making jokes. But Scott, you have Scott Pilgrim and Ramona Flowers are the 2 central characters. Scott Pilgrim...
Yeah, I was gonna make you explain this as my next question.
Scott Pilgrim is a person that goes on a journey. He has an end goal in mind. He has somewhere he knows he's trying to get to, and that is, being in this relationship with Ramona. And he starts off in this, frankly, not great place. He is really, his ex, he had a really bad breakup with his ex about a year ago. He is now in this relationship that he really couldn't care much about, and frankly shouldn't even be in to begin with. Bless you. But he sees this new goal, he sees this new destination, and he starts running towards it. He starts chasing it relentlessly. And that destination is Ramona Flowers. Now, flowers, throughout many cultures, are a symbol of rebirth, a new life after a long period of being dead. And Ramona herself is not some, prize to be won. She herself is a very nuanced and flawed character who herself must go on a journey of self-discovery as well. And the 2 of them together, it represents both a journey and rebirth, a journey towards rebirth. Both Ramona and Scott are on this path where, at the end of it, they hope to find a new life, preferably together. And there are other symbols throughout the comics, but, I don't want to spoil things too badly.
So this is interesting to me. So we referenced... This is not the first time Scott Pilgrim has come up on this show, because in the Crime and Punishment episode, we analogized Scott Pilgrim to Rodion Raskolnikov. And what's interesting about Raskolnikov as a protagonist is that he is someone who ends up pursuing redemption after doing something terrible, like Scott. With Raskolnikov, it's more of a single terrible act rather than a life of slacking and slovenliness, but it's the same principle. And Raskolnikov achieves redemption of his character, but what he's actually trying to do is help out a prostitute. And the redemption of himself is incidental. So would you say that in Scott's case, it's a similar situation, that his self-redemption is incidental to his initial objective?
I would say that, yes, I would actually say that his redemption is incidental. It's less like he sort of realizes how bad of a person he's been and he tries to be better. And more like he sees this girl, this person who he thinks could be the love of his life, and really just by complete happenstance in his journey to be with her, he, whether he wants to or not, must face all the bad things he's done throughout his life. And I describe him, Scott Pilgrim is not like a total monster. He's not actively malicious. But that's the problem. He's never actively malicious, but he is actively ignorant or actively apathetic.
He's a parasite, not a predator.
Exactly. He does not intentionally harm people. He does, however, latch on to people and basically drain them for everything they're worth before releasing them and finding something else to do.
You know what I realized might be another symbolic name is his roommate Wallace Wells.
Yeah.
Because a well is something that you reach into and you draw resources out of it constantly.
And Wallace Wells is basically the complete opposite of Scott. He has what he wants in life. He is like fairly stable and self-centered. He knows sort of where to go and what to do. Meanwhile, Scott is just crashing in his house and sleeping in his bed.
Yeah.
And, Wallace is willing to tolerate that for a certain period of time, but there's always like a ticking clock throughout the story to see like how long is Wallace going to tolerate this before he just kicks him out altogether.
And Scott is drawing on Wallace for money and for emotional support. And so that could be why his name is Wells.
Yeah. And eventually, there's a question of when will the well run dry.
Yeah. So this idea of redemption as something achieved incidentally, I just want to pitch an idea to you. You tell me what you think of it. Do you think a person could become redeemed by thinking, today I'm going to turn myself around and become a good person? Or do you think redemption is always incidental to some other objective where because redemption requires caring about something outside yourself, do you think it has to be the incidental result of some other goal? Or do you think someone really could achieve redemption just by saying, I'm going to achieve redemption?
Now, see, this might sound like a bit of a cop-out, but I believe that tends to fluctuate from person to person. I do believe that redemption is possible as a goal. You can actively seek it, and you can perhaps find it by seeking it. But also, sometimes redemption just sort of comes naturally. It sort of comes through wanting something else and attaining redemption through it. And redemption can take a lot of forms. Because when you're someone who's like, you're heavily flawed, and you sort of know deep in your heart that you're doing a lot of things wrong, and heck, even if you don't have a lot of like deep biting things in your heart, but you just have a few things that are sort of lingering in your mind, redemption, I feel, is more about the willingness to change. Redemption is whether you specifically want to change for the better or you just want to change something about yourself. That, I think, is where redemption starts. Because I believe redemption starts with hope. Redemption starts with hope in the idea that you can find something better than what you have now. And whether that's hope to be a better person, or hope to be with this girl who means everything to you, or hope to achieve something in life that like feels right. And I think redemption typically tends to come through that. I think redemption is born out of a desire to change, though. Whether you specifically want redemption or want something that just might lead to it.
I think I do agree with you to a certain extent that you have to recognize change is possible in order to change. But like in the case of Raskolnikov when he's helping this prostitute, because if you didn't listen to that episode and you haven't read the book, the plot of that book is that Raskolnikov murders somebody and then is redeemed through, or is at least possibly redeemed through helping his own family and helping a prostitute and her family. And Raskolnikov at no point thinks, I'm redeeming myself, I'm changing, I'm becoming better, because he's so focused on actually helping other people that he's not even thinking about himself. And that is his redemption, that he's not thinking about his own redemption.
Yeah, I think redemption is, and this may sound like a bit of a cop-out, but redemption is perhaps one of the most situationally dependent things that a person can do. Because redemption is simply just absolving yourself of sin and finding a way to make up for the things you did. And making up for different things can take different forms. So I think Raskolnikov, he doesn't think that he's redeeming himself. What he thinks is that he's just helping somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas with Scott, he doesn't think he's redeeming himself. He just thinks that he is sort of going back on his own past so that the girl he loves will, want to stay with him. And that is really... Scott, I feel, is he feels sort of like a modern take on a very classic literary trope. I believe, I don't want to say it's the Byronic hero, but it's like...
Byronic?
I don't know.
What is the literary trope? Explain it and I might be able to tell you what it's called.
The idea is that Scott he is not...
Byronic, like Lord Byron. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Go on.
He is not entirely good. He is not entirely evil. He is simply flawed. And he sort of seeks something. He desperately wants something. And whether he knows it or not, he may find heroism and he may find redemption through that.
Okay.
It's less like... He sort of, at least to me, brings to mind some of like these morally gray characters of sort of classic literature. And I would say like with Raskolnikov, he is sort of like this gray figure, at least for a lot of the book, until this bad thing happens, and suddenly he wants to change. He wants to make up for what he did. And Scott...
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't even want to make up for what he did. He doesn't want to change. He just wants to help people. Like, he doesn't think, well, this will be a great way to redeem that horrible thing I did. He's just like, people are in trouble, I have to help them. I mean, now that I think about it, there is a sense of he turns around from the bad thing he thought was right. He no longer thinks it's right after he's done it. But I don't think he's thinking, this'll balance the scales. Yeah. He's just kind of like, I've got to help these people, they're in trouble.
And that's sort of with Scott. He doesn't think, being with Ramona will make up for all the bad things I did. More just that, I want to be with Ramona, and incidentally I will have to look at all the bad things I've done and think about what they mean to me and what they've meant to other people.
This is something that I learned in my Bible as literature class. I'm not sure. You can just bounce this right back to me and say, no, this isn't interesting because it is kind of a trivia, a bit of information, but if you find this interesting to discuss, that the actual meaning of the word redemption is, like the original meaning is when a debt is cancelled. When a person who is in debt, now I can't remember if it's that you redeem the debt by paying it off, or if redeeming the debt is when you don't have to pay it anymore. It's been cancelled. I don't know, is that an interesting thing to discuss the original financial meaning of the term and then its analogy to morality?
I would say it does kind of fit with this. I would say it would fit with this. It does fit with the story, I think. Because Scott, to put it very simply, is a horrible boyfriend.
Yeah.
He is...
To Knives, at least.
Yeah, to Knives, but also to Kim and to Envy. He is...
Well, to Envy... he's a bad boyfriend to Envy, but Envy's a bad girlfriend to him.
That is true. They had sort of mutual things that eventually tore them apart, and he did not take it well. But Scott has really his entire life not been great with relationships, or at least not been great with really making sure the people that he leads a relationship with leave in a healthy or stable way.
Yeah.
He's the kind of person where once something new kind of catches his eye, he just kind of stumbles towards it and leaves whatever he had behind. He doesn't really make an effort to find closure with people, even people who really want closure with him. Because that's sort of the thing about Scott, where, like, he's a bad person, and he's bad as, like, a boyfriend, but at least in the beginning of the story, quite a few people either actively like him, or at least just tolerate him being around. Like, even the people who he's kind of hurt in the past either learn to move past it, or at least learn to cope with it, but he never has. He has never paid back the debt that he left with these people. And, you know, really, as time has gone on, you start to wonder, like, has that debt grown too big? Has the rift grown too large for Scott to ever be able to truly apologize? I think that's one of the main draws of the book, is like, or the story in general, is seeing, like, how far is Scott gonna fall before he realizes that he needs to actually do something about his life?
And this is this problem of leaving people behind is Ramona's flaw as well.
It is. I mean, she does have 7 exes, and without going into too much detail,
they're all evil.
They are all evil, and she did, though some of them did screw her over, but more often than not, it was her who did the screwing over.
It was she who did the screwing over.
Don't you lecture me about grammar. But
yeah.
She is nowhere near perfect herself. She really, the reason why all of these exes are evil is because, well, some of them are just petty, bad people, but some of them are just people she genuinely hurt, and yeah, they're evil because they take it out on someone who didn't do anything to them in a violent way, but also, like, they were also people who were hurt. And really the difference between Scott's exes and Ramona's exes is just that Ramona's are the ones who are trying to kill Scott.
Yeah. Except that one time where it is the other way around with Envy, yeah. Is that more than halfway through it? Does that violate our rules?
Well, actually, in the second book, Knives does go out of her way to attack Ramona.
Okay, yeah, so Knives too.
So then you kind of start to actually, and that's sort of an interesting thing, is like, you start to see Scott and Ramona becoming a bit too uncomfortably similar, because, like, really, if Scott keeps going the way he's going, he's going to have a bunch of evil exes too.
So, going back to the main theme of this story,
yeah,
this is kind of it's an interesting subversion of a trope, which I haven't seen a lot in books because it's kind of outdated in books, but it is very popular in the movies now, the action movies. The idea that a bad man can be redeemed by the love of a good woman. Whereas this book it's a subversion of that theme, it seems to me, because it's rather that the love of a bad man and a bad woman can redeem each other.
Yeah, it's like Ramona is not some, like, perfect person, this, you know, shining beacon on a hill that Scott is way beneath. Scott and Ramona are both very flawed people in their own ways, and frankly in a lot of similar ways. So the two of them together, it's not that, like, a good woman redeems a bad man, or a good man redeems a bad woman. It's a bad man and a bad woman learning to love each other, and through that learn to love and respect themselves.
And you know, it's almost unbearably trite, but they become what the other thinks of them as.
Yeah.
That's what improves them, is that they want to be what the other one thinks they are.
Yeah. And their flaws are still there. Like, Ramona is still, like, tempted by her urge to just run away from the problem and find something else. And Scott is always tempted by his urge to, like, chase the new thing and leave whatever he had behind. So really, they both kind of have a lot of the same problem, where they just run away from their flaws and don't try to address anything. They just leave it in the dust and hope it doesn't follow them. But unfortunately for the both of them, it very much does. And there is sort of an intersection point. And here on the Read Anything Lately podcast, we don't like to discuss anything more than halfway through the book.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm sort of straddling the line here by talking something that about something that is almost exactly at the halfway point.
What's the event?
I want to talk about the events of the third book and how they kind of like Scott and Ramona's paths kind of intersect with each other.
With
Todd and Envy.
Oh, I don't know. Use your discretion. You've read it more recently than I.
Yeah.
So if you think that it's safe to discuss, if it's not too big a turning point, then sure.
So in the third book, we sort of see a connection of sorts, sort of an intersection point between Ramona's life and Scott's life. So, in the third book, the third evil ex that Scott needs to fight is Todd Ingram, who, on account of being a vegan, has incredibly powerful psychic abilities. Meanwhile, Envy Adams, who is Scott's ex that he dated in college, she and Todd are in a very famous band together, and Envy is, well, sort of as the name suggests, sort of very envious of people. Even when she learns that Scott is dating Ramona, she immediately becomes jealous, even though she was the one who dumped Scott in the first place. However, the two of them, Todd and Envy, they have actually been good friends for a very long time. And as they sort of get together now, one of them having dumped Scott and one of them having dumped Ramona, it's sort of an interesting parallel where, while Ramona and Scott sort of try to encourage each other's good qualities, Todd and Envy encourage each other's bad qualities. So while Scott and Ramona sort of encourage each other to get better and to really, like, find ways to love each other and to get over the flaws of their past, Todd and Envy are like, they've kind of always, well, actually, that's not entirely true, but I'm not going to go into that. But Todd and Envy are really just bringing out the worst in each other. Todd is sort of like, he's actually sort of an interesting parallel to Scott, and even like intentionally so to a degree. While Scott is sort of incidentally and passively selfish and apathetic and crude, Todd is intentionally selfish and apathetic and crude. One of his big mottos is that, I'm a rock star, baby, I can do what I want. He is this very selfish person who doesn't follow the rules, and rather than being a cool, rather than not following the rules being portrayed as a cool thing, instead it's being portrayed as this sort of selfish, stupid thing where, like, there are a few rules that he doesn't follow that very much bite him in the butt later. But, we'll see if we end up talking about those today. If you want to find out, go read the comics. They're very good. But anyway, meanwhile, Envy, who is with Todd, she is sort of becoming more and more of what really she was when she left Scott. She has become more selfish, more hateful, more generally cold and aggressive, whereas she did used to be like a fairly kind, nice person. Until sort of circumstances changed her. And her and Todd, once again, they really do bring out the worst in each other. They really do drag each other down. And while they do seem to clearly, like, care for each other, there is definitely a point where you realize that these two are what Scott and Ramona could become if they let their flaws dominate themselves rather than their positive traits. And it eventually sort of ends in a very, well, it does end in a sort of, should I talk about the ending of the third book?
I don't remember the ending of the third book, so I don't remember if it's a spoiler.
So, I won't spoil it too much, but it essentially ends with Todd. He is defeated by breaking an important rule or an important establishment of society. And from there, he is severely and harshly punished, and thus defeated. And that ending for Todd, which, mind you, this is exactly halfway through the series.
Yeah.
It's
so
sort
we're,
of,
treading the line.
It is sort of a dark mirror of what Scott could become if he continues on this path. Like, if he continues to be this cold, selfish person that he is, and he continues to break these rules of society, whether or not they're established, he could find himself like basically losing everything and being forced to become a permanently lesser version of what he could have been. So Todd's fate is sort of a warning against Scott. It's like, hey Scott, look at this guy who mirrors you in a lot of ways, except he's not a coward about being a bad person.
Yeah.
And look at what happened to him. Do you want that to happen to you? Then you better shape up.
Yeah, it's a very standard literary trope, and it works very well, especially with this kind of hero, to juxtapose them with someone who's very similar, only without whatever redeeming quality allows them to better themselves.
Yeah.
One of my favorite writers, Terry Pratchett. I won't spoil. It's spoilers if I told you which book or which two characters. But there's two characters in the book who are both evil, and one of them manages to redeem themselves, and the other doesn't. And we get a reflection from Death, the Grim Reaper, on the situation, where he looks at one of them and he goes, "In that one, there is something that could have been better, but the other," and he shakes his head. And I feel that's always a theme in this kind of story of someone bettering themselves, is there's always this juxtaposition of, in this one there is something that can be better, but in this one there is not.
And that is sort of like, that is really this, one of the most important things about the story is that, actually, in sort of another answer to your question about how Brian Lee O'Malley melds the shonen aspects with the slice of life aspects, every villain Scott fights, whether or not they're an evil ex, because there are some who aren't, every one of them that faces him sort of reminds him of another part of himself. Or it's sort of like, some ways intentionally, some ways not, just sort of brings to mind another aspect of his own past, another aspect of stuff he's done and mistakes he's made. And the kind of funny thing about Scott is he's sometimes just not smart enough to realize it. Like, I know I said this before and I must reiterate, Scott is not smart at all.
Yeah.
He's not like a brain-dead moron, but he has very little social grace, and he is not book smart in the slightest. Like, he is often, one of his main problems is that it's kind of hard to have an epiphany when you're not smart enough to realize that something has even changed to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about Scott, is he has a really hard time recognizing change. And that's sort of why he's such a slacker. It's like he can't really see. For example, one of his exes, Kim Pine, the two of them used to be very close, and Scott even fought a lot, just like Ramona, fought a lot of people just to be with her. But, things change, they sort of go their separate ways, and now Kim has gone from being this sort of, still a bit laconic, but very kind and empathetic person, to being this very cold, sarcastic, brooding person who is sort of on the border between hating Scott and tolerating him. And Scott just doesn't really seem to care or notice.
And I would not, it doesn't seem to me that Kim has been, she's definitely soured towards Scott, but she's a perfectly pleasant, functional person. It's not like he's mentally scarred her. She just hates him. That's
actually a good point. So, and that's even another thing on top of that is, I know I did say that Kim was sort of this dour person, but Isaac did, correct me. She is actually, around other people, is actually still a fairly friendly and sociable person. It's just Scott that she cannot stand.
Yeah.
And Scott, again, either does not notice or does not care, or both. And one of his main, through a very particular plot development that occurs later on, that I don't want to spoil because it's honestly one of my favorite parts about it, Scott is eventually forced to sort of grapple with the fact that he has changed other people's lives for the worse, and he has not noticed. He noticed, he did notice when Envy was changing, sort of becoming a bit more of a worse person, but he never really bothered to find out why. He never really bothered to try to help her or try to talk to her. He just kind of noticed she was getting worse, and to my recollection, didn't really do anything about it. And, by then it was too late. And that's sort of a problem with Scott. Not to say that the other people in his life are, desperately in need of help. More is that he is desperately in need of the ability to realize when other people are hurting or other people are going through rough times, especially when it's because of him.
So you've read this more recently than I have, as I've said, so
yes.
I don't remember if this is more than halfway through or if it's on the first page or whatever. There's some kind of reveal with Envy Adams' name, right? Is that something we can talk about, or is that more than halfway through?
That, I believe that actually happens at the end of the second book.
Okay, so do you think that would be interesting to talk about, or do you think we should just talk about another topic? Because I don't remember how interesting the reveal is.
It's essentially the reveal is just that Envy is not her real name, it's just her first two initials put together. Her name is not literally Envy Adams, it's something else. And it's not really super important, it's really another example of how Envy has changed from what she's went through, and Scott, again, didn't really put in any sort of effort to help her or to understand her. And that's sort of that is Scott's main problem. He does not understand other people. He does not go out of his way to talk to others unless he has to. I suppose he is generally friendly, but he does not really go out of his way to connect to other people. He is, by and large, just this very unintentionally selfish, apathetic person. To the point where it takes other people screaming in his face that they need to talk for him to finally realize that maybe he needs to talk. And I know I'm going on and on about Scott, but that's just because he's, the main character.
Yeah, the series is called Scott Pilgrim.
But
that makes sense.
The interesting thing is that we actually get to see sort of firsthand how Scott's, we actually, as far as I didn't talk about this earlier, we get a very we get a very first-hand view of how Scott's laziness and apathy has affected other people and the way that it affects Knives Chow, who, again, is his high school girlfriend, and when I say high school girlfriend, I mean he is 23 and she is 17. This is not a good thing that is happening. Yeah.
And maybe I should, just for the sake of our audience, probably we should have even mentioned this the first time we mentioned Knives, because Brian Lee O'Malley makes sure to make this clear to us very quickly, with this great, in a moment that is also very funny, where Stephen Stills, the head of Scott's band, says your girlfriend's a high schooler? You mean you? And Scott goes, no, we've never even held hands.
Yeah, even the other people in the story are dude, what are you doing? I get it, you had a bad breakup, but what? But
I'm just trying to clarify for the audience that Scott Pilgrim's a scumbag, but he's not a sexual predator.
Yes, he is not. He is a scumbag, but he does not go that far in the slightest. But
he goes that far in the slightest.
What?
He's got a fake high school girlfriend to begin with.
Oh well.
So he does go there in the slightest.
That is true.
But not Grand Mal.
But essentially, once it happens in this really awkward way where Scott meets Ramona, he starts going out with Ramona while still technically being with Knives, and then he has to kind of awkwardly tell her, "Hey, this isn't gonna work. Bye." And then on the bus ride home, he looks a little sad about it, but then he just starts thinking about Ramona again. He starts smiling like nothing happened. Meanwhile, Knives is absolutely devastated. She is practically in hysterics. And sure, she's a high schooler, so she's not fully emotionally mature.
Yeah.
But she is very, very heavily affected by the way Scott treated her. And
emotionally mature comment is funny because, of course, in terms of actual physiological development, we're both much closer to Knives than we are to Scott.
That is true. Yeah, we're saying this as two people who were 17 a few months ago.
Yeah, we're both 1 year older than Knives.
Yeah. So we sort of see how Knives does become in real time, basically. We see her become this more violent, angry, jealous person who, like, she was hurt by Scott, finds out he's dating Ramona, and then starts trying to literally kill her. Like, she attacks her in a shopping mall full of people. And it is partially played for comedy. But also, it is just this really upfront, blunt view of, like, Scott has seriously hurt this person. Scott has, like, seriously impacted this young person's life. And sort of...
I think the fiddling with the hand sanitizer might be audible in the episode.
Sorry, I have a little bottle of hand sanitizer that I was kind of playing around
He's
with.
sort of banging it like a gavel. If you've been hearing... I'm not even sure how long you've been doing it, if it's been like 1 minute or 15. I honestly don't know.
Sorry.
So if you've been hearing some kind of sound for the last indeterminate number of minutes, that was a hand sanitizer bottle on a plywood table.
Apologies. But essentially, Knives is, like, very deeply impacted by sort of these emotional scars that Scott left on her. And the way she reacts is, yeah, it's exaggerated because it's, you know, it's both a comedy and partially a shonen manga, but also it does kind of fit it feels like, besides the obviously exaggerated parts, it feels, like, strangely realistic. Like, yeah, of course someone who was emotionally manipulated at a young age and then unceremoniously dropped by that person would feel like a lot of very conflicting emotions, would feel like very grief-stricken, very angry, very sad. And it's really heartbreaking to see it happen because Scott doesn't care. Scott really doesn't care. He does not check in with her. He does not even talk to her at all.
Yeah.
He doesn't even try to apologize. He just kind of leaves. And then he basically doesn't, like, Knives basically has to help herself move on. Like, no one else besides, like, maybe her friend is really even there to help her at all. Like, she shows up at Scott's apartment wanting to talk to him, and Wallace answers the door, and all he says is, "You have to go." Like, in a sense of, like, Wallace is really one of the only one of Scott's friends who tried to actually... They all knew that it was bad, but he was one of the only people who actually, like, made an effort to tell Scott, like, look, you need to stop doing this, you're hurt.
Sorry to interrupt, and one of the only people to tell Knives not to. Wallace is also one of the only people to do that.
Yeah.
He says to Knives, like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Scott sucks.
Yeah, like, you could do so much better than him.
Yeah.
Like, leave while you still can. And it's kind of interesting how, even in that particular scene, Wallace is once again being this sort of, you know, repository of help by just being the person to tell Knives that she has to get over it when Scott doesn't.
Yeah.
And again, we see her sort of throughout the comic, and once again, it's kind of heartbreaking how she has to, like, move on alone. She has to, like, deal with all of these, like, conflicting emotions with basically only the help of, like, one of her friends. Like, no, she does still continue to hang out with the Scott Pilgrim and his crew for a while after that, but, like, besides that, no one really tries to help her, no one tries to talk to her. She does things that are kind of obvious of her, like, trying to, you know, soften the blow, but it's sort of obvious that she's just trying to cope. And it really is heartbreaking how, like, Knives is this example of someone Scott has hurt in real time.
Yeah,
like,
right.
He hurt Kim, like, years ago, back in high school. He hurt Envy, like, a year or two ago in college. And he's hurt Knives now. And, like, he's the kind of person where he doesn't even try to hurt people. He's not actively malicious. He's just actively ignorant and apathetic. And that's the main thing that being with Ramona is like. It's sort of like a trial. It's like the crucible that he must sort of forge himself in and realize, you know, do I even really have what it takes to truly love someone? Or is this just going to be another, like, fling for a few months and then I'm over it? And it's really the same question Ramona needs to ask herself. Because again, everyone she dated either turned evil, whether by their own personalities or by what Ramona did to them. And frankly, like, even the people who were already evil, it just kind of goes to show, like, Ramona was not really a great judge of character for most of her life. Just like Scott was not.
Yeah. Oh crap, I had something really interesting to say and then it was at my lips, and then I forgot it. Okay, here's a question. So a lot of stuff in Scott Pilgrim, at least two things, are named after musical works of some kind that I think you know better than I do. There's the song Scott Pilgrim by what band? I can't remember. Plumtree. And then the second volume is called Scott Pilgrim and the Infinite Sadness. Third volume, which is named after Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Which is by the Smashing Pumpkins. So I know you're more familiar with that music than I am, but I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. What is its, if you know, what is its influence on Scott Pilgrim? So, this is actually sort of an interesting thing about Scott Pilgrim. A lot of it, this is not, though it does have themes, it does have like a point to it, it does have a message. A lot of it was just written because Brian Lee O'Malley thought it was cool.
And needed money. That's what I heard, that he was literally like starving to death, and he wrote this comic because he knew it would make him enough money to like survive. He's like, I've got an idea that'll sell.
Yeah, so like a lot of Scott Pilgrim is actually, a lot of these elements, they do serve the plot. They are intentional. However, you'll kind of see throughout the story, a lot of these things were added just because Mr. Lee O'Malley thought they were cool, or because he thought they were like, oh hey, I like this music. I'm gonna name. To my knowledge, there was nothing about the song Scott. There's nothing about the song Scott Pilgrim that influenced Scott Pilgrim as a character. Though I have actually listened to the song a few times. I should probably actually listen to it again just to like see if that point still stands. But
I heard that he was inspired by the line "I've loved you for 1,000 years."
Yes, I heard that too actually. But and I will say actually, these songs, and it does play into the fact that Scott and his friends are in this band called Sex Bomb, and they do kind of suck. They are not very good. They get better as the series goes on, but there's one particular moment where they play so wildly out of key that like everyone just leaves in like a tired huff. Like everyone is upset.
And I heard somewhere that the band is called Sex Bomb because wasn't it like Brian Lee O'Malley and his friends argued about how bombs from Mario reproduce? They're like, how do they make more bombs? Well, I don't remember.
I do from what I kind of gathered, it's from the song Sex Bomb by Tom Jones.
Okay.
And also, bombs from Mario. So it could be that, like an inside joke, or it could be like
You're probably right, yeah.
a song reference mixed with a video game reference. And that's actually, song references and video game references are like 50% of this comic. Like, they are everywhere. And one thing about Scott Pilgrim that I've always kind of thought is, intentionally or not, it is a beautiful, beautiful period piece for the early 2000s. It captures...
And the mid and late, I mean, it was even started in the mid 2000s. Like, I guess I don't know. You've said it more. You've read it more recently.
It is kind of strange how like it started out with like clearly 2004 era technology, and then by 2010, in the last comic, Scott is seen playing a PSP Vita, which came out in like 2010.
Oh, okay.
So it's sort of like the time period is supposed to be like mid to late 2000s, but it captures the feeling of being like a young person in that time period beautifully. Like, it is such like an atmospheric book. I think like, and that's like the aesthetics and the references and the music, they all play into the general themes and the tone. This isn't supposed to be like this happy-go-lucky, super bright and colorful story, even though there are plenty of bright and colorful parts about it. It's meant to sort of capture that vibe of being a young person in this time period, and then really like play that into who these characters are, what their backgrounds are, how the tone of the story sort of fits together. And again, one of the interesting things about reading these comics is like how much of this was done for thematic purposes and how much of it was done because Brian Lee O'Malley thought it would be cool to put like a flip phone, even though it's supposed to be 2005.
And that's the whole history of literature and everything in it. There's all kinds of stuff where things that are seen as thematic are in fact completely incidental. I'll give you two examples that I think kind of enforce your point. One is when I was saying that Brian Lee O'Malley wrote Scott Pilgrim out of desperation because he was dying of starvation. That's also why Dostoevsky wrote Crime and Punishment. He wrote it for money. He was poor. He was starving. He was cold. It was Russia. And so this completely mercenary thing that he did for money became this great literary work of art. I mean, not completely mercenary, but, largely for money. And then there's a famous story about one of Raymond Chandler's books, I think. I don't remember which one, where there's this big mystery about who killed the chauffeur. The chauffeur is found dead with his throat cut. And somebody asked him a little while after the book was written, because in the book it's never answered who killed the chauffeur. So the fans wanted to know. They asked him, hey, Chandler, how did the chauffeur die?
I don't know.
And Chandler goes, oh, I forgot about him. So the reason why it's never revealed in the book is because he wrote that the chauffeur died and then forgot, and so never put an explanation in there.
Even though that's the whole point of the book?
It's not the whole point of the book, but it was a thing that people were curious about for years after he wrote it and assumed there must be an answer. But it's very similar. This is just something he put in. Presumably he put it in because it was a neat moment. He was like, oh, the chauffeur should be dead. That'd be cool. And then never bothered to even write an explanation for it.
And at the risk of sounding like really meta here, I almost feel like that style of creating Scott Pilgrim almost perfectly defines Scott Pilgrim as a character. Like, he's not the kind of guy who will think deeply about the things he does or the things he makes. He's just like, oh, hey, this would be cool. Or, oh, hey, this would be fun. And then he does it, and he just kind of moves on. Like, Scott Pilgrim himself is living in this mercenary way of just doing what he needs to do or doing what he thinks is interesting.
Well, hold on. So mercenary means for profit.
Well, yeah, I know. He's living in this sort of way of, like, doing things for profit and for his own gain.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
But he's really doing things for his own gain. And another thing is, actually kind of on that note, one thing about Scott Pilgrim is that it is not autobiographical. However, most of the characters and the setting of the comic itself are heavily based off of Brian Lee O'Malley and his family and his friends and the people in his life. Like, Scott Pilgrim is... One thing I kind of think is funny is that Scott Pilgrim is basically a self-insert story, but the self-insert is a terrible person who sucks and everyone hates him. But a lot of his... for example, he wrote Ramona because at the time, he himself had a cool American girlfriend. Oh yeah, by the way, Ramona Flowers is not from Canada. She is from New York, in the U.S.
And everyone in the story...
goes on about her being American.
Yeah, they're so amazed by it, which is very funny because, like, I happen to know that the actual Canadian attitude toward Americans is like, oh yeah, America. I mean, it's the same way we think of Canadians, like, oh yeah, Canadians. And so the idea that everyone is like, she's from America is like, it's very funny.
She's America.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and like, the interesting thing is that because so many of the characters are based off of people, Lee O'Malley knew, a lot of people actually got mad at him when he wrote the book. A lot of people were kind of upset with, like, essentially asking, like, is this supposed to be me? Like, is this what you think of me?
And it's like, well, yes, it's supposed to be you, but also no, it isn't. It's supposed to be you, but you're not supposed to be it.
Yeah, it's like, and that's sort of another thing is, like, in a way, Scott Pilgrim feels like a way for Brian Lee O'Malley to sort of reflect on his own life. Like, he is not Scott Pilgrim. He is not, like, exactly the same person. But they share a lot of similar traits, and really through discussing Scott's character, it sort of feels like he's discussing his own in a way. Excuse me. I think, I know I've been going on and on about Scott as a character. But
well, but he is the character. I mean, it's a character-driven story.
Yeah, he is the guy. It is him versus the world.
Yeah.
But I think we should actually. I think one thing that might actually be kind of cool is, how do you think, like, this is actually a question I have for you.
Okay.
Because I think I have a strong opinion myself, but you sort of have known it for longer.
Okay.
How do you think the adaptations, like particularly the movie, since I know a bit more about the TV show. But how do you think like the adaptations kind of play into the story? Like,
Okay, I'll answer that. So I have watched the movie, I've seen the show, and I've played the beat 'em up video game. And so
oh, you played the game?
I have played the game.
Oh, nice.
The game's fine. I think like you can heal by getting knives to bring you coffee or something. There's some she like comes in on like a rainbow and she's got coffee and like gives it to you or something. I don't remember exactly. It's fine. It's not anyway. So the movie was actually my first exposure to Scott Pilgrim, and I had not seen the trailer, and so I was going into it expecting a completely grounded romantic comedy, and so the moment Matthew Patel comes smashing through the ceiling of the rock venue, like on fire and screaming, I was like, holy cow. Like, I'm watching a very different movie than I thought I would be watching.
And that, I think that's sort of the point it's supposed to go over, is like, here are some, like, hey, here's a sort of normal story, and ooh, there's like a little spooky supernatural stuff in there. And then suddenly, this guy comes bursting through the ceiling, screaming Scott Pilgrim's name. Yeah. Mr. Pilgrim!
Yeah.
Like, just, this guy comes crashing through the ceiling. His fists are like on fire, and he's being trailed by these fighting spirits, and
His demon hipster chicks.
Yeah, the demon hipster chicks. Like that moment is like such a beautiful moment of tone whiplash.
Yeah.
Where like, oh, this is the kind of book this is gonna be.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so the movie was my first exposure to it. I watched it, I think, because I had just seen a movie with Michael Cera, and I was like, I want to watch another movie with Michael Cera in it.
I gotta watch Superbad again.
Oh, Superbad's great. But so I really liked the movie. I think the movie is a great adaptation. I don't think that the movie is... It's not the same story as the books. Mm-hmm. It's a very different kind of story. The books take place over like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And they have lots and this is a very standard book-movie difference, because a book plot tends to be long and rambling with many subplots and side characters, whereas a movie tends to follow basically a single plot with a single character reaching a single conclusion. Mm-hmm. And I do think that diminishes the story of Scott Pilgrim. I think a lot of Scott Pilgrim, to quote Virgil, these digressions are not a distraction to the story, but the substance of it. That is very much Scott Pilgrim. The digressions and the side characters and the subplots are a major part of the story. They're a major part of the theme. Yeah. But the movie is, it's delightfully entertaining. It's very funny. It carries a lot of the themes of the original. It is considered as its own work of art, an excellent movie. Mm-hmm. The TV show, I did not pay very much attention to when I watched it, and so I can't really speak to its quality.
I did pay a lot of attention to it. I actually really liked it. However, I cannot say much about it.
Yes, let's just say that we can't tell you about the TV show, but you should read the book or watch the movie and then watch the TV show.
If you want, here's the thing.
Don't watch the TV show first.
If you want, like, a sort of more concise story to be like, oh, okay, this is what it's generally about, watch the movie. If you really want to understand what's going on, read the comics, then watch the show. Yeah. You're going to need to.
Don't watch the show first.
Yeah.
The show is not meant to be watched first.
Yeah. I think, I feel like to sort of, because we are...
so we're 1 hour and 4 minutes in.
Yep.
So I think it's time for closing thoughts, conclusions. Any last questions you want me to ask you or whatever?
I think... So I want to put it very bluntly how I feel about this comic. And that's that, while I do know that there are quite a few that I need to read, I am quite comfortable in saying that Scott Pilgrim, even though it does have its flaws, is... perhaps not, like, the very best, but one of the most important comic books written in the last 50 years. Like, this story is like... This is like modern classical literature in terms of how important it is. Like, this is the indie comic that all the ones you know about spawned from. Whether they were intentionally inspired by it or whether they just sort of saw its influence and wanted to tell a similar story and make a similar impact, Scott Pilgrim is like the progenitor of the modern indie comic.
So this is to indie comics what Watchmen is to mainstream comics.
I would say so, yes.
Okay.
Like, and maybe this is even going too far, I feel like, and you feel free to stop me on this one if this is like too much of a statement, I feel like Scott Pilgrim is to indie comics what Don Quixote is to literature.
Maybe. I wouldn't be able to vouch for that far. I mean, because, I'm not sure about that one way or the other because I don't know very much about indie comics.
Mm-hmm. But, and that sort of statement aside, that I admit that might be a bit of an overstatement, but I hope it goes to show just how much it shows how much I love this comic and how much I love the story and these characters. Again, it's not perfect. It does have plenty of flaws. There's a reason why I talked a lot more about Scott than Ramona. She does have some like influence on the story, and she is definitely significant. But the story focuses far more on Scott than her.
Yeah, she's you're right.
And sometimes the jokes don't land, and sometimes the emotional parts feel a bit weird. But I feel like even the weirdness and even the things that don't land add to the charm overall. It feels like this isn't some piece of like produced, corporate slop or whatever. This is just a person, like a young person, writing this book because they want to, and because like making all these comic book and movie and video game and music references because they want to, and writing the story they want to write. And I think that's beautiful. I think this story is proof that you don't need to have like a very detailed idea of the plot and the themes of your story before going into it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just write, just start, just go for it, just make something that appeals to you. And hey, I mean, even if it is just to help get you out of a bit of a tight financial spot, it's still worth it. Because Scott Pilgrim did not change for the better until he had something that he wanted to pursue. So if any of you out there are considering making something of your own, it doesn't have to be a comic book. It could just be a goal in mind that you've had but never known if you could grab. Just go for it.
Yeah, just give it a shot.
If you don't think you can do it now, still go for it. See if you can you might just change on the way. And who knows where you'll be when you end up there.
Yeah. All right. Any more thoughts?
I guess this goes without saying, but read this comic book.
Read it.
And then watch the movie and watch the TV show. Play the video game if you want to. There's actually another video game coming out.
Oh yeah, what kind of game is it?
It's basically the same thing. It takes a bit more from the TV show though.
Oh, okay.
So, Scott Pilgrim is pretty cool.
All right, you've been listening to the Read Anything Lately podcast, episode 7. I've been Isaac.
And I've been Jason. And
we discussed Scott Pilgrim. We will see you next time.
Whenever that is. But it will be soon this time.
Probably.
Definitely.
All right. Bye.
Bye.